Hi, it's Helen Tarrant. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and I'm here to answer the question about what increases the value of commercial property. So a lot of people ask about commercial property and how does that increased value happen. Now, commercial property happens in a couple of ways. One way is market value, so increases the value. So as the market changes, so does the value of your commercial property. So what does that mean? It means that if the market, like residential, the market heats up, there's very little demand and there's a lot of people trying to get into the area, most people will pay a higher price for that property because they need to be in the area. The area is specific, or the area might have boomed, the area might have an infrastructure, they might all of a sudden get an anchor tenant, and therefore that draws a lot of people. So for example, all of a sudden you have a Bunnings, or you have a big medical centre that's open, or a big shopping centre, and a lot of the little tenants want to be around there because they know where the traffic is. That increases the value of your property. The other thing is, a lot of people who are buying owner occupiers would often pay more for a property than they would. So just kind of like residential, if you're living in the property, so if you're going to operate your business out of it, or if your tenants are actually buying the property off you, then they're going to likely pay more than an investor. Well, investors are only going to look at a return and the cash flow and the potential in the back end and the longevity of your tenant, whereas a owner occupier who's already there, or an owner occupier looking at this location, they know it suits their business, they will often pay more because they're going to be there for 20 years. So if they pay a little bit more, it doesn't really matter. So the other thing is, but as an investor, what actually increases the value of your property? And one of the big things is actually increasing lettable area and increasing your rent. So if you change your tenant, so you get a normal tenant, let's say a normal takeaway tenant, so you got a mum and dad takeaway shop, and all of a sudden you change that out for a Subway, or you change that out for one of the branded tenants in there, then like it could be a Taco Bell, or like a one of the brand name chains, then, or even something that is a local chain, that serves iconic coffee, or they serve iconic food, and they can have 2 or 3 in the local area, then all of a sudden the value of that property goes up. So people are then willing to pay more, because what people associate with larger tenants or tenants with brand names is security. Whether it actually delivers security or not is a debatable point, because they do have longevity, but if they were going out there and they were going to break the lease, or if they are going out there and negotiating a lease and they want rental incentives, they are actually very aggressive in that process. But the perception in the market is that they are more stable, and as a result, people are willing to pay a higher price for that stability. People are always willing to pay a higher price for stability. So if you change out one tenant with another tenant, so you change out with a normal mum and dad tenant with a more professional type tenant, say a lawyer or a professional tenant, like a business, even business consultancy or financial planner, then people are going to pay more for that. Now, if you swap them out for a Slater and Gordon, or you change them to a PwC, or even somewhere that fits in food, or a dentist, something that is more brand name, then people are willing to pay more. So that's how you increase the value of your property, by swapping out and changing your tenant. And a lot of people do that. They buy vacant properties that are in a location they know is, for example, it's zoned in a medical zone. There's a lot of medical coming through, a lot of development, and that they seek to put a specialist in there. Now, the other option is actually to look at increasing lettable area. So what normally happens is, the smaller the area you are, the better location you are, the more smaller area you are, the more higher you charge per square meter. Because most of the rents, and this just goes for retail as well as office space and warehouse, most of the smaller properties are harder to find. They're usually larger properties, 200-300 square meters are easy to find, and normally 200-300 meters you give them a much lower rate per square meter in terms of rental. So the smaller they are, the more they cater for the masses. So that means your mum and dad starting out their first business, someone who's one-man band, someone who's looking at a startup, they may just need space to put in 1 or 2 or 3 staff members. So the smaller you are in your property in terms of space, usually the higher the rent, and you'll find there's less of it in the market. So normally we take a property and say, could we divide this property safely into 2 or 3 potential tenancies, and then we can charge a little bit more. Yes, we may actually lose out a few square meters by putting in a dividing wall or creating a kitchenette area or some communal toilets and stuff like that. But ultimately, if we're charging a slightly higher rate per square meter in rent, we do make up for it because we get higher rent. The other option is actually extending into the property. So is there an area you can offer? So if there's land at the back, or even if there is an outside area, could you apply to council to get an outdoor seating area if you had a cafe or restaurant? Courtyard, could you help and extend the back with an awning, extend into the back into a courtyard, pave it for them, make sure that it's an area where they can create more eatery area. Similarly, could you, if you were in a warehouse, could you build a mezzanine floor so there's more lettable area? In an office space, it gets a little bit harder, but the office space is mainly you're looking at a larger space, dividing it into two smaller spaces and getting that dual tenancy. So looking at ways of increasing rent and increasing letter area increases the value of your property. So remember, when you're trying to increase the value of your commercial property, there's a few strategies. Number one is changing the tenant. So if you find a property that is in a really good location, but a tenant is not paying market rent, a tenant that is just not right for the property, not effectively using all of the capacity of the property, buying it when they're on a shorter lease, changing the tenant, putting a new tenant in there that will refurbish your property, get on a new lease, pay a slightly higher rent, or even if they pay the same rent but they're more reliable and a much better branded tenant, you're going to increase the value of your property. Number two is increasing lettable area. So if you could extend to the property or create more areas where they can get their customers in, and that creates the value because you can charge more when you have more areas. So that effectively that leads on to increasing the rent. So if you're in a large space, make them smaller spaces, and then you can charge more rate per square meter for the smaller spaces, therefore increasing the rent. And as the rent grows, so does the value of your property. So I hope that has been helpful for you to understand how to increase the value of your property. There are many different strategies, and some of these strategies don't happen overnight, but it does require you to work on it over a 6-12 month period to be able to create that uplift. But once you get that uplift, it's well worth it because you can sell it or pull out the equity and do it again. So until next time, hit the bell and subscribe, and bye for now.